It's great to be joined today by my partner Chris Chapman, who is in the London Financial Services Regulatory Practice. Today we're going to be talking about crypto assets. And I'd like to start, Chris, by asking you, how have you seen the crypto space develop over the last year?
So 2022 was pretty turbulent, Amy. I think we had 60% off the value of Bitcoin and Ether, and other major cryptocurrencies fell by even more. We had what some people described as the crypto credit crisis, with the failure of some other currencies and some major businesses. At the same time, I think I'm right that by some measures it was the biggest year for crypto investment. So blockchain and crypto asset businesses, I think, got venture capital of 30% more than the year before. I think 30 billion or something incredible like that. We've had pretty significant technological advances. So Ethereum, for example, made some advances to reduce the energy consumption of crypto mining, and some pretty significant advances in the way crypto is going to be regulated in the future, which we might talk about in a bit.
Have there been many security issues that have presented themselves as a result of these developments?
Yeah, so 2022 was also a pretty significant year for security issues. So I think about US $4 billion of assets were stolen by hackers. Big focus targeting decentralized finance protocols, rumors of North Korean-linked hackers playing a pretty significant role. Also, we've had an increase in scams and fraud. But at the same time, the industry is getting better at coping with that. So firms are understandably a lot more focused on security arrangements. They've realised that's essential for their survival. And law enforcement agencies are becoming much more sophisticated at tracing and seizing assets, and also doing some pretty interesting stuff targeting businesses that have been caught up in laundering stolen assets after the event.
And what regulations are there currently in the UK in this area?
So at the moment in the UK, I'd describe us as having a medium level of regulation. So we're not as heavily regulated in this space as, say, peer jurisdictions like Germany, but we're more heavily regulated than others, and our regulators are quite good at doing a lot with what they have. At the moment, like in other jurisdictions, some crypto assets happen to have the same characteristics as other regulated financial instruments and are regulated in the same way. So some crypto security tokens qualify as securities and are regulated as securities. For other types of assets, there's not the same level of regulation, but some service providers are regulated in a lighter way. So they have to be registered with the FCA and are regulated for money laundering purposes, but that only applies if they're carrying out business in the UK, and so some international providers are able to target UK customers without being covered by those UK regulations.
And what are you seeing as a result of this lack of regulation?
The UK regulators are pretty concerned. I think they've watched what's happened in the last year, in particular worried about losses suffered by consumers, suffered as a result of businesses who aren't regulated in the UK for the way they're marketing or promoting their services. They've also been concerned for quite a while about financial crime, especially money laundering in relation to crypto assets. And they see these as big problems they need to try to fix. But in the UK, they need the help of Parliament to legislate to allow them to do that.
Are you aware of any plans that the government has then to regulate these crypto assets?
So the UK government for a while now has had plans in place to regulate stablecoins and also to increase the regulation of financial promotion for crypto assets, including in relation to firms offshore. But I think the last year in particular has really helped speed up some other initiatives to further regulate the area. So they are now consulting on a new regime to regulate crypto assets like other financial instruments. Their idea is to have a level playing field for traditional and emerging financial products. And the idea is, you have the same risk, the same regulatory outcome.
What's this going to mean for consumers and businesses?
So it means better protection and clarity around the regulations applying to crypto assets. That's pretty significant for consumers who are worried about the risks. I think it's even more significant for businesses because at the moment there's a reputational issue associated with businesses who work in the crypto space, or traditional businesses who work in the crypto space, especially for regulated financial services firms whose regulators have made it clear that if you're dealing in the crypto space, you need to properly manage financial crime risk, which is really tricky. So it is really difficult for traditional businesses to get fully involved in the crypto space at the moment, and regulations will hopefully help fix that.
And is this then going to have an impact in turn on the economy?
Yeah, so I mean, lots of people see this area, digital assets, as an important part of the future of finance. I think despite what some of the issues in the last year, I think the statistics are that the number of UK consumers who have owned crypto in the past has nearly doubled, I think from 5.7% to around 10%. So it has the potential to be a really important part of the economy, important part of the global economy, but also an important for the UK, especially as a centre of financial services. And there's some interesting questions we might discuss later about competition with other jurisdictions.
So this is all really fast-paced change. Are you anticipating an increase in disputes in this area?
Yeah, that's a really interesting area. I mean, I've talked a bit about law enforcement agencies and the way they're dealing with this area. There's also some pretty interesting and innovative cases around on the civil liability side. So interesting issues around how to deal with decentralised finance, tracing and jurisdiction. It's just a really interesting area in terms of the development of law and also the application of existing law to sort of a new technology.
Do you think we're going to see a change globally in regulation?
Absolutely. I mean, all the other major jurisdictions are doing what the UK is doing and enhancing their regulation in this area. So in particular, the EU has introduced, or is in the process of implementing and introducing the new markets in crypto assets regulation. I think like a lot of things in the post-Brexit world, there'll be some quite interesting questions for the UK in terms of how far its own new regime will be able to depart from that. They've got to balance, things like, a lighter regime might help attract businesses, but a heavier regime actually has some of the advantages we're talking about before, of giving consumers and businesses more confidence in crypto assets in the UK and in the market more generally.
That was really interesting, Chris. Thanks so much for coming today. My final question for you is just to say, for any clients who are watching us, what would be your key takeaways? So,
I mean, this is just about the most interesting area of my practice. I think we're in for more interesting times. One of the things I'm quite interested to see is what I sort of would describe as maybe a divergence in this area. On the one hand, you've got the mainstreaming of digital assets, which we've been talking about. I mean, if you look at the really big service providers in this area at the moment, they are looking to establish themselves and become regulated in big jurisdictions like the UK, the US and Europe. They want to do that because it is good for their reputation and they can see the advantages of the global digital assets market in the future and they want to be part of that. At the same time, you've got another stream of sort of part of the more traditional thinking about crypto assets, which is one of the reasons this started in the first place was to get away from mainstream finance. That promoted innovation and people have achieved amazing things, but at the same time it came with difficulties, especially in the area of money laundering and financial crime. I think it'd be really interesting to watch sort of those two streams and how they each play out.